And a pleasant Tuesday, everybody. Welcome into the It's Official podcast, where Jeff Siegel and Jeremy Plonk from First Bet take a look back at the big news of the week. And sometimes we even look ahead, Jeff, but there's so much going and coming and crossover this week. I don't know how we're going to stuff it all in.
We're going to have to be very succinct in our comments because we have a lot of them. So rather than stretch it out, we'll condense them because there's so much to talk about, not only from last week, as you mentioned, and not only from North America, but from overseas as well. Right. But then what's coming up this week is fantastic. So let's get to it. I mean, lots to talk about for sure. Lots of opinions. Some of them might even actually have merit. Who knows?
We'll find out in just a bit. We've got Santa Anita Derby in 2 weeks' time. This week, it's Florida Derby. So that means we're getting high time towards the Triple Crown. Before we get into a lot of Triple Crown talk, though, let's go to our big board and talk about what happened in Dubai last week. It was Dubai World Cup Day on Saturday at Meydan Racecourse. And what a dominant performance by the Japanese, including in the Dubai World Cup itself.
And they're into the stretch of the Dubai World Cup. Bendoug, Algiers. These two turn for home 1-2. They're side by side with 3/16 of a mile to run. And from the back of the pack, here comes Ushba Tesoro with a rush on the far outside. Algiers to catch. Ushba Tesoro gains in, goes by. Ushba Tesoro hits the front. Ushba Tesoro wins the Dubai World Cup for Japan. Algiers and Emblem ran up.
As much of an individual performance this is for Ushba Tesoro, what about the national implications, Jeff Siegel? The fact that Japan has had success at Del Mar in the Breeders' Cup a couple of years ago, the success at the Saudi Cup, now the Dubai World Cup. Are we talking about a shift of power here worldwide?
Hard to ignore. I mean, here's the thing about the Japanese contingent in Dubai. It's not like just one horse popped up. I mean, they dominated in several of the races. And this horse, who's 6 years of age, he has now run 29 times, but he's won his last 5 in a row, and including this race. Ushba Tesoro, he's by a Japanese stallion out of a mare who was bred in Japan. So it's not like they're stealing our bloodstock to make these good horses. I mean, Ushba Tesoro, and here's another thing that I think maybe got a little lost in the shuffle, is there was a kind of a consensus during the day that speed was very, very powerful on that track. And he came from stone last to win this race. So it just showed that if it was a speed bias track, he even ran better than the line shows. Maybe it really wasn't. But Ushba Tesoro had won his last 5. He earned a very strong time form rating in this race, and his I mean, it was a legit race. I know that you liked, and for very, very good reasons, you liked the runner-up in this race, Algiers, who ran his race. I mean, he did everything he was supposed to do, except for that long stretch did him in, and he had won his last 2 starts by a combined 12 lengths. He was a legitimate race. This was a real race at a mile and a quarter, and the Americans flat out got exposed. I mean, that was just almost borderline embarrassing for Country Grammar. And then the Florida horse who chipped in, Super Carino, they were just non-competitive, really. And I mean, I don't know what to say other than the Japanese horses are for real. For whatever reason, they are for real.
Yeah, my dad's got a saying is the money's not yours until you can actually touch it. I had the feeling on my fingertips with Algiers, the length of the stretch. I thought he was going to draw off and win easily. And then Ushba Tesoro came and ran by him. But, phenomenal performance by the winner. Poor performance by the American entrants there. We did see some success by Sibelius in the sprint race, the Alquaz sprint, or the Golden Shaheen, I should say, on the main track. The Alquaz is the turf sprint there. But on the main track in the Dubai Golden Shaheen, it was a great performance by Sibelius from Florida. Really ran a big performance coming out of the race at Tampa Bay. So at least with the Americans, we can still say we may not be the best horses on dirt in the world, but we still got the best sprinters. I mean, we're like American dirt sprinters are kind of like the last niche where we just seem to be holding on, and not to say that our dirt horses are inferior to other parts of the world, but some have caught up in other parts of the world to where we better send a good dirt horse over, right? Just not any dirt horse is going to show up and beat some of these horses from around the world on the dirt, especially from Japan. Jeff, on the turf, the Americans had no representation going along on the turf. This was all Europeans and Japanese horses in Dubai. And once again, it was all about Japan in the Shima Classic, as Equinox looked like the next great thing on grass.
Equinox yet to be set down. He turns for home in control. Mostadaf on the outside second. Zagreg is third. Rebels Romance trying to make his move down the center. Westover 2 and Shariar on the outside. But Equinox is still going strong. And he's lengthening his lead down to the 16th pole. Here is the titan of the world's turf. He is Equinox. He scores for Japan by 4 lengths on the wire.
Now, you saw that blaze coming down the stretch, and you couldn't help think Sunday Silence, just the face, the look, everything about this runner. And, of course, it was the great Sunday Silence whose career at stud in Japan really kickstarted the program there in the late 80s. The Japanese wanted to advance their racing cause. They created races like the Japan Cup. They went and acquired for a lot of money Sunday Silence, the best horse in America. The easygoer people are cringing right now as I say that, but the best horse in America at the time, Sunday Silence, and brought him over for a long and successful stallion career. So he's kind of the father, if you will, of the Japanese breeding program in the modern era, Sunday Silence. Tesoro, a great turf horse there, but just the look just kind of just gave me a flashback to Sunday Silence there. What did you make? Not the winner there, Equinox, I should say. Just dazzling on turf. And this is a name that unless you followed, Japanese racing, you really didn't know until Saturday morning.
Yeah, he was the Japanese horse of the year, and he might be the horse of the world based on this race. I mean, he not only did he laugh at some top-class horses, but he did it under wraps, as he was supposed to do. He is a big, strong, very athletic, powerful LeBron James type of horse, if you wanted to, to compare him to a human basketball player. But Equinox is just head and shoulders. And you mentioned that the U.S. was not represented in this race. You would think that we could find 1 or 2 that we could have sent over, even if not to win, but then they maybe hit the board. We don't even have that. And when you compare Equinox to what we have in the States, it's like it's a joke. I mean, you couldn't possibly imagine the gap between the American turf horses and what the world has to offer. Right. And the trainer said that when it was asked after the race, where to now, and he said it was a translated response, right. But the gist I got was that they'll go anywhere around the world. They would actually like to showcase him around the world. And so I hope that means Breeders' Cup. I would love to see him. I don't know. He's just remarkable. And I tell you what, I tell you who I was not quite as impressed with, but I love the way the runner-up ran, Westover. He, of course, won the Irish Derby last year by 7 lengths. He's a high-class horse himself. Didn't run well in the Arc, and this was his first race back, and he finished eagerly. I mean, he's back to his best. And as good as Westover, I know, is on his best day, I mean, Equinox is a different world. So that shows you how much, to me, he was the star of the day, and one that I certainly will follow wherever he runs, whatever country he runs next time out and down the road throughout the year.
And visually, he looks like one of those horses who really gets over the top of the turf, really skips over the top. On a hard turf course like he would get here in the U.S. coming in, even that time of the year, but if he would come for the Breeders' Cup, oh my goodness, how he would get over the grass could be, just something fantastic to see. If you didn't get enough of the Japanese runners on Saturday in Dubai, we've got one more race to show you. And it means you're going to see several of these horses again come the first Saturday in May. Let's go back and look at the UAE Derby.
As Japan leads the way to the top of the stretch, Derma Sotagake under a hand ride here. Coming down to the 8th pole in control. Dura Arede is second. Then comes Continuar in third. But it is Derma Sotagake and a confident Christophe Lemaire pouring it on late. Derma Sotagake, an impressive winner of the UAE Derby, winning it easily here by 5 or 6 lengths under the wire.
Jeff, at the end of a mile and 3/16, you're used to seeing leg action. It's just kind of lumbering, right? Let's just get this thing over with and get to the wire. He's still reaching out at the end. And Derma Sotogake opened up on that field, not because they were all laboring behind him, but because he was still running. This was a really impressive performance. Japan runs 1, 2, 3, and notably in here on points, the first and second place finishers are in good shape. They'll get into the Kentucky Derby more than likely. Winner for sure. The runner-ups got 40. They both want to come. The third place finisher in the race, Continuar, may not have the points out of that race, but he won the points chasing the Japan road to the Derby, where he gets an automatic berth to the Derby if they want it. And they said, yes, we'll accept that. So he's already guaranteed in the field for the Kentucky Derby. Continuar, the third place finisher. The top two most likely get there. We could be looking at 3 Japanese horses in the Kentucky Derby, which would be unprecedented, plus a fourth running at Santa Anita in the Santa Anita Derby coming up in 2 weeks. Maybe he punches his ticket in with a 1-2 finish there. Upwards of maybe 4 of 20 horses in the Kentucky Derby could be from Japan. What a performance from the winner here, but also Derma Sotogake, but also the impact that it's going to have on the Kentucky Derby itself, the way the order shook out.
This was a real race. I know that you say, okay, he made the lead. Fine. A lot of horses run great when they make the lead. But they don't always finish as strong either on the lead as this colt did. I didn't do that much work on this race. So, I knew who was running. I was more interested to see how the Americans would run because I wanted to have some kind of gauge to see what we're dealing with here. And Worcester was completely non-competitive. He didn't break all that well. Odd G's, Doug O'Neill's horse. These horses are, again, so badly outclassed. It wasn't even funny. And I went back after the race to watch Derma Sotogake's race in the Saudi Derby, which was a 1-turn mile. And that's a little different kind of race than a mile and 3/16 around 2 turns. And I actually thought, he ran good in that race too. He was third. He was caught for speed early on. He wasn't able to make the lead, having a meltdown, blazed away. It was a very, very fast race, but he stayed on willingly. He wasn't hanging his head the last 8 mile. He kept to his task. He had his head down. He finished as well as anything in the race to be third. And now stretching out from an inside draw in a paceless race, it made a lot of sense after the race, which it usually does. But such to a point where, I'm going to take him seriously. I know people are going to throw him out and, it's Japanese and it's Dubai and all that. You don't run a mile and 3/16 and 155 and small change without being able to run. And the field was spread out. It wasn't like they all finished in a heap. I'd love to see this colt come over and watch him train, see how he acclimates, if he's going to run in the Derby, because based on what we talked about, Jeremy, last week, where's the speed in the Kentucky Derby?
Right, exactly.
If you leave this horse alone, do you think he's coming back? Are you sure he's going to come back? I wouldn't be so sure.
And typically with an UAE Derby winner, it's a mile and 3/16. You say, okay, it's going to be kind of slow, a carousel-y kind of race, that kind of deal. But this horse was sharp enough in the 1-turn mile in Saudi that you were talking about, the run as well as he did. So that makes him a little different to me. Like, he's got sharp dirt speed to run very competitive in a group stakes going a mile, and then also stretch it out and win at the mile and 3/16 in the UAE Derby. That makes him a little bit different than, say, some European grass horse who would win the UAE Derby one year. But you say, okay, is he really quick enough on dirt, or did he just catch one of these, long races on the dirt where the pace was beneficial to him, that sort of thing? I think he's got a lot of upside. I'm gonna jump on the wagon a little bit. Look, we're looking for some speed. We're looking for some speed in this crop. We haven't had it, so he checks that box. We see what Japan has done around the world. He certainly checks that box. And we're looking for somebody other than Forte and Practical Move right now. Those two look really good, and everybody else. Well, Domo Sotogake fits with everybody else, right? I think he is, he is at least with everybody. And so that's what we're going to find out with Derma Sotogake when they come to the U.S. Can't wait to watch those horses train. The morning shows leading up to the Derby are going to be phenomenal to watch those horses train for a couple of weeks.
One other thing I wanted to mention is I like Cairo in that race, and his form wasn't bad. He was a graded stakes winner, group stakes winner in Ireland last year. And I watched him. He sat behind this horse in a good spot, and at the top of the stretch, you talk about waving the white flag. I was like, enough. I'm done. I've had it.
Ireland, I've had it.
Right. And it shows you that horses, that he not only it's hard to judge the fractions there, but he went fast and he kept on going. He got that second move. Everybody else, was chasing him, and forget it. So I'm impressed. I think he's for real. I don't know whether he'll reproduce that form at Churchill, but boy, I'm going to be watching, as you said, the days and weeks leading up, because he's exciting and he's a fresh face and he's dangerous.
Speaking of a fresh face, we had it in the Louisiana Derby, a horse for Todd Pletcher, who was coming up off of a maiden race and then a allowance race at Tampa Bay Downs. Hadn't been tested in stakes company until the Louisiana Derby, where he took on the Lecomte winner, among others, that being Instant Coffee. But it was pace makes the race. You and I talked about this last week. Who was going to make the front, and how dangerous would they be once they made the front? Well, that answer both was Kingsbarns.
As Japan leads the way to the top of the stretch, Derma Sotogake under a hand ride here.
It's Kingsbarns. Jace's Road now launching this bid. Cagliostro is a close third, with Dennington in fourth. Shopper's Revenge, single ruler, and looking to gain on the far outside as they straighten away, as Instant Coffee has the black cap. In the meantime, it's still Kingsbarns. Kingsbarns, 1 furlong to go, and Kingsbarns looking to finish them off in the Louisiana Derby. And Kingsbarns has opened up 5 lengths now on Disarm, who's gained second from Jace's Road. Shopper's Revenge. Instant Coffee is next, but it's Kingsbarns and Flavian Pratt. Kingsbarns undefeated, 3 for 3. Kingsbarns won by 4 from Disarm. Jace's Road was next, then Sun Thunder, Shopper's Revenge, Instant Coffee, and Tabit's Conquest. Kingsbarns goes wire to wire.
So, Jeff, we hadn't seen much pace on the entire Kentucky Derby Trail until Saturday. And by the end of the day, in the morning, we had a wire-to-wire winner in the UAE, and we had a wire-to-wire winner in Louisiana. Your thoughts on Kingsbarns?
Well, you loved him, and for good reason. I like the runner-up, and they both broke right side by side in the race. Kingsbarn was 6 and Disarm was 5. And I was saying to myself as they were going to the gate, who's going to take the initiative to grab the lead and dominate in a race that has no speed? And I looked at the form and I thought, well, Kingsbarn had sat behind horses before. I'm not sure they're going to send him because they don't probably think they need to. And then you have Disarm, who isn't really a speed horse either, but he's a grinder. He doesn't have the turn of foot that Kingsbarn is. So if you give him too much to do, you're not winning. So I thought for sure that it would be Disarm and Rosario would take the initiative. Coming out of the gate, you watch Pratt on Kingsbarn, and he's chirping to him, go, go.
Yeah.
Right next door is Rosario, and he's And I said, they hadn't gone 50 yards, and I said, the race is over. Race is over.
Right.
Because you've got the two, in my opinion, best horses, and one's going to be in front, and he's going to go 3/4 and 14 and change, which he did. And the other one's going to be behind horses, checking and steadying. And when he gets clear, he's not going to be able to give you that explosion because he doesn't have it. So the race was a blackboard race. We all felt that Instant Coffee would be victimized, maybe not this much, but even though he's a deep closer in a race with no speed, you would have wanted him to at least make up some ground, and he didn't. But here's the thing about Kingsbarn. He's now 3 for 3. He's by Uncle Mo. He's out of a mare by Tabit. They only gave $800,000 for him, so it's not like they didn't think he was going to be good anyway. And now he's won on the lead, or he's won 2 races before that from off the base. You've got a handy, versatile colt who's just getting nothing but better. Why can't he be right there with the big boys? Based on what I saw, I know they ended in the race, but it doesn't mean they wouldn't have won anyway, no matter what they ran.
Yeah, I mean, you look at horses like Instant Coffee, he actually lost ground from the half mile to the wire on the winner. So, like, the closers didn't do anything against this guy. You know, you could talk about how the pace got handed to him, but nobody made any dent. It's not like he was, first under the wire and there were 4 lined up behind him, that were all coming to get him and galloped out past him. It didn't work out that way. He was best horse, and it worked out to his advantage because he was capable of getting to the front and taking advantage of that pace. Really good ride in there by Pratt. And, he read the form better than the others, went to the front and and did what he was supposed to do. Now, look, this race was terribly slow, right? The half in 49.60, 1:14.69 for 6 furlongs. I mean, that was like 15, 18 lengths slower after 6 furlongs than the Phillies race, the Fairgrounds Oaks, and also the race for the boys in New Orleans Handicap for the older horses. So they did go really, really slow, but it became a sprint to the wire, and he actually had the gear after setting the tone to even open up and increase his advantage. I mean, there was really nothing cutting into him. Disarm ran a good race. I thought he ran a very credible race, considered second off the layoff for him. Very light campaign. He looks like a quality horse towards the Kentucky Derby. First 2 are in there. Jace's Road, who ran third, was okay. He kind of acquitted himself for a bad performance last time. Ran back to his gun runner form, and he ran well on a fast track, which was good to see after having some success. Sloppy track maybe being part of his results in the past. So, top 3 probably headed to the Kentucky Derby in here. Beyond that, I don't know what they'll do with Instant Coffee. This was not a good performance. He ran 6th as the 3-2 favorite. Again, he was about 6 lengths off the lead going down the backstretch. He ended up 9 behind at the wire. I mean, that's for a closer. You could talk all about being pace advantaged all you want. And yes, he was wide and he made what visually looked like a little bit of a move, but then he had no starts. He had nothing, and being 6 lengths behind 6 furlongs and 1:14, he should have had plenty, and he should have been running and motoring through the wire and should have been galloping out with some steam. And and you come back and you say, okay, this is a horse who ran a good 4th, was rallying, galloped out well, and was a victim. He wasn't a victim. He didn't run. Instant Coffee ran terribly for a horse who, a lot of us had, myself included, top 2 or 3. Part of that is what you see scouting, and part of that is what the resume looks like. He had a very good resume, winning the Kentucky Jockey Club and the Lecomte. 2-turn victories at ages 2 and 3. Only he and Forte could brag about that to this point in the trail. So it was fine to respect Instant Coffee going into that race and his credentials, because he was credentialed. He had the resume. But this was not a performance indicative of a horse who can be any factor whatsoever in the Kentucky Derby if they decide to move on. Unless you come out of this and you say there was some foot problem or whatever, and we know. But now the clock works against you, right? And you don't want any feather in your path, as straw in your path, as they say, leading up between now and the Derby. So if there is a physical excuse for why he ran bad, it would explain this performance. But that is not a positive moving towards the Kentucky Derby, that, we can wipe that away because he had a physical problem, because they're going to have to get over the physical problem and then train like a monster up to the Derby in order to be competitive, because nobody wins the Derby unless they are training absolutely lights out. So for me, it's like off the trail with Instant Coffee in one performance. And it's just disappointing because he has a good resume. Maybe he'll turn out to be a good horse, and maybe there's something they need to get right, or maybe he's just not fast. I don't have the answer, but I know the bottom line estimation would be that I'm off the Instant Coffee trail. And I would think that maybe they'll be off the Kentucky Derby trail as well. He'll need help on points even to get in at this point.
Yeah, he's lost me. If he comes back and wins and runs well, might tip my hat to him. But I'm not backing a horse that ran like that. Sorry, no. I just won't. And if I had him, I have a serious question about whether I would want to push on right now. Not only because there may be something physical that maybe we don't know about that caused him to run well, but maybe he's not this good either. Yeah. That's a possibility. So I tell you what, Kings Barnes for sure is going to be a horse I'm going to watch train. Undefeated and versatile and in top barn and a great pedigree. And Disarm, I think, will go 1.25 miles. I don't know whether he's quite good enough to win a Kentucky Derby, but he's certainly good enough to run in it and maybe get a piece of it. Right. So all in all, and as far as the time is concerned and the buyer speed figure, you can't have a fast buyer speed figure when you're going 3/4 and 14 and 3. But he did finish out quickly. I like the way now you're supposed to finish out quickly if you're going that slow. But the final time is a kind of a well, it's due to the slow fractions. You can't have a fast final time. I don't even care about fast time. I care about what I see, and what I see is a very, very good colt, and a colt that. I mean, he won his previous race and went to half in 46 and 1. It wasn't like he couldn't cope with that. So come on, let's not worry about the time. Let's worry about how good this colt might very well be, and I think he might be very, very good.
Kings Barnes over the fourth quarter and the final 3/16 ran identical fractions to Epicenter last year when he won the Louisiana Derby. So there was a far different race the first 3/4 of a mile, no doubt about it. But they came home identically, and so he's pretty good. He's pretty good, and Pletcher's got 3 of them now. We'll talk about more of them moving forward with Tapit Trice, and he'll go in the Bluegrass in 2 weeks. And, of course, this coming weekend when we do our Florida Derby preview, we'll all know about Forte. Now, the funny thing is we talk about Instant Coffee not being maybe just not that good. A horse he had handled a couple times, Two Phils, went the other direction. He got away from Louisiana. Trainer Larry Ravelli said he was honestly looking for an easier spot to get Kentucky Derby qualifying points because he thought he had a Derby kind of horse. Well, his daddy Hard Spun loved it at Turfway. That was in the poly track era. They run on Tapeta now, but there's something about that synthetic track at Turfway in Florence that the Hard Spun son, Two Phils, certainly loved, just like his dad.
And here they come to the top of the home stretch in a grade 3 Jeff Ruby Strengths. And up to the outside, Two Phils sweeping up and after the lead. Major Dude from between horses. That's all for Fantastic again. 1 furlong to go. And the son of Hard Spun, Two Phils, is opening up here. What a performance, an impassioned run by Two Phils, who's drawing away with authority. Two Phils, brilliant, taking the Jeff Ruby Stakes, a prime performance.
So now we go from synthetic back to dirt, and a lot of times a horse who would win the Jeff Ruby would be kind of unproven on dirt or had already shown dirt and wasn't very good at it. Two Phils is pretty good on dirt. He's run well at Churchill. He ran the Kentucky Jockey Club last year. The September races. He's okay on dirt. There's nothing wrong with him. His form was decent down in the fairgrounds before coming here. This looks to be a good prep. You got an easy race. You got the stretch out to the 1 1/8. Now sometimes you get that bounce from, turf to dirt or synthetic to dirt that some trainers like to see. So all things positive for Two Phils coming out of this, I'd have to think.
I will say this about Two Phils. When he wins, he likes to pour it on. He doesn't call off the dogs. He won his maiden by 2.5. He won a race at Canterbury by almost 10. And then he won over a sloppy track, a race called the Street Sense at Churchill. He won that race by 5 1/4. So when he wins, he blows you away. Yeah. But if he doesn't win, he doesn't look that good. So I don't know what to make of Two Phils, other than the fact that if it rains on Derby Day, I'm going to throw him in for sure, because I know he loves an off track, and he obviously loves the synthetic. This was a visually very impressive performance. He had some really nice horses down the track, not finishing close, but down the track.
Right.
They gave him a 101 buyer speed figure, triple-digit buyer number, which is the kind of number that if it was earned on dirt, you'd really take him seriously.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can. I know what I saw. It was a great race. He looked terrific. And we've seen all weather races produce Kentucky Derby winners in the past, so it's not like it's impossible. I just don't know what to make of him. I want to see him train between now and then, and we'll see if that race, if you can trust it. I don't know if I can trust it. All I know is he looked great, but great on synthetic isn't always great on dirt.
Yeah, and I mentioned Hard Spun as Papa. It's the exact same campaign. Hard Spun was in Louisiana. He was down there at the beginning of the Louisiana Derby series, and then Larry Jones took him up the run in the Spiral back then. It was now the Jeff Ruby, and then he went on to run second to Street Sense in the Kentucky Derby, and Hard Spun ran a really good race. So Two Phils is in that same pedigree, same plan. Both trainers named Larry. Everything's in the cards. Larry Ravelli from Larry Jones. Who knows? Maybe it's about the Larry connection. But
let me ask you a question. Where do you put him on your rankings? Do you have any hesitation about raising him up, or because?
He would definitely go up because I didn't have him very high at all. I think he might.
You didn't. That's right.
He was like 18, 19 going into this race.
Yeah.
I would say he's probably in the top 7 or 8 now.
Okay.
I'm not going to put him like 3 or 4, but. There's still some of those horses that are above that have another race yet to run, so they could drop down. He could find himself moving up without running, and then it's about the training, right? So if you're 7 or 8 now, you're a contender because you figure 1 or 2 or 3 of those above you is going to go by the wayside. That brings you up to 4 or 5. If you train really well, that can move you up a spot or 2 in my estimation. I don't take a horse I think is the 10th best in the crop, and they're training well, and all of a sudden make him the winner. But if he's up to 4th or 5th on my list of I think this is the 4th or 5th best horse in the race, and he's training like crazy, then he could move up. He could be a player. I still don't think he's a 1.25 mile horse. And the Hard Spun, you still think of kind of like mile and a 16th type. And Hard Spun himself was good to the 1 1/8. Did run well in the Derby when running second. So, yeah, he could be one of those horses that's just not quite a mile and a quarter horse, and you want to use third, fourth, or fifth in a super high five or something in the Derby. But I think he's going to be somebody to consider in there. Larry Ravelli, if you followed racing in Chicago over the last decade, he wins everything in sight. The shame about it with Arlington closing is really that was Ravelli's, bread and butter, big meat. And his horses are going to start showing up other places now that we won't have Arlington racing coming this year. So, last year, now this year. And so, maybe people start to know Ravelli a little bit more on a national scale with his horses. He ships a few into Saratoga during the summer for stakes, but he's a high percentage horseman, mostly known for speed horses and shorter distance horses. He's not known for having the big, long-winded types. Maybe this would be his one that takes him to the next level of training. But Two Phils, I mean, you couldn't ask for any more out of the Spiral, right? Even if you still don't think he's that great, this was a good performance. This is what you wanted to see, right? And
great performance.
Yeah. So now it just becomes how he stacks up with the rest of them. Right. Let's go to our Triple Crown tracker next as topic 4 on the big board this week. Keeps us on the 3-year-old path. And, we had a couple of races beyond what we've talked about already, including the one at Sunland on Sunday where, there wasn't much to be taken out of this race. Big upsetter in here, Wild on Ice at 35-1. Let's give the fans a look at this race, and then we'll talk a little bit about the stakes to come on the Triple Crown track.
Wild on Ice is forging a big run. Can Wild on Ice do it? Wild on Ice reaching forward by about a half. It's Wild on Ice on the inside. Low expectations in a classic. Kenny Tohill has done it. Wild on Ice in a shocking upset won the Sunland Derby.
As much as we had speed in the Louisiana Derby get an easy trip, the speed in the Sunland Derby just obliterated itself. Henry Q went out there. Baffert's horse went out there. They went 45 and change and a half. And like your buddy in Dubai, they were Cairo. They were throwing the white flag up at the quarter pole. They were done. And I guess it just left chaos because there was nothing left on the board but chaos.
Wild on Ice had just run in the previous race, the Mind That Bird Derby, and he had been beaten around 20 lengths by Henry Q. So if you're Henry Q's connections, you figure, I don't think we have to worry about that horse, but you did. But what happened here, I think, I'm speculating. I have no information about this, but the 2 California horses are Henry Q, who was third in this race, and hard to figure Baffert's horse, who finished dead last. I have a hunch they both bled. I try to find that out because they went fast, but they didn't go like 44-2 and something like that. I mean, they went fast enough over a fast track. They shouldn't have been exhausted at the quarter pole, and they both just kind of. I mean, Henry Q just finished on fumes, and Baffert's horse, hard to figure, was beaten a short photo in his last stakes here at Santa Anita. I mean, he didn't even finish. He literally walked across the wire. So I don't know. The buyer number was 77. I think that's generous. The connections now are living the dream. They have now nominated for the Kentucky Derby. Don't go. Please don't
nominations
go.
announced today.
Don't go. I mean, come on. Don't go. I mean, I know it's a dream and all that. I've had it. I've had the experience of running 2 horses in the Kentucky Derby. It's not worth it. Tell me. I'm telling you, it's not worth it. So, I mean, and I was hoping to see Henry Q, being by blame, build on that last race and become a Derby candidate for Mick Cronin and Chip Kelly and my friends on the and Delmar Group. But, no, you can't do that. And
they too late supplemented to the Triple Crown, which obviously nominates you to get you,
that's true
all
too.
3 races. So it could be a Preakness look for some of those horses looking to come in fresh at a shorter distance. And so maybe these horses from Sunland, we'll see 1 or 2, perhaps on that 3rd Saturday in May. The one takeaway from, I don't even know who said it on Twitter, but it was just one of those things you laugh at. But the takeaway, the track announcer, we've had some fun with the track announcer at Sunland over the calls. Somebody said he sounded like Roddy Piper, the old pro wrestler. And now I can't unhear it. It's completely in my ear. And I'm ready for him like to crack a coconut over Jimmy Superfly Snuka's head or something like that, He's wearing a kilt in the announcer's booth and cutting a promo with Mean Gene Okerlund or something. I mean, I can't unhear that, but that's a great analogy. Roddy Piper on the mic at Sunland Park. Let's look ahead now on the Triple Crown tracker to what we have this week. quick look. We're going to give some video analysis of these races throughout the week on social media, so be sure to check those out on the First Bet and Express Bet channels. But we're going to take a look ahead quickly to the Florida Derby and the Arkansas Derby. Florida Derby, Jeff, coming up on Saturday, sponsored by Curlin, stallion of the stars, and of course, your favorite stallion, Curlin. April 1st, 6:40 post time for Saturday's Florida Derby. Your initial thoughts on a field of 12 where Forte is the 4-5 morning line favorite from post 11 of 12.
Well, what we saw Forte in his comeback race was breathtakingly impressive. And I don't even think he was cranked up. What do you think of that? I think he was like 80% fit. And he's probably going to be 95% fit here. And, of course, he'll peak for the Derby. I know that there's a concern about leaving from the 11 hole, but I would rather be out there in the clear rather than being down inside where if you don't break and everybody crosses over in front of you and they start shuffling you back and you get checking and you can't move when you want to move. Forte is good enough to lose ground even from the 11 hole. As long as he can dictate his own race, I don't think it's a problem at all. If I had that for a horse like him, if I had to choose one or the other, I'd rather be outside because that way I know at least I'm in the clear. No dirt in my face. I can move when I want. I'll lose ground, but if I can't beat this group losing ground, then I'm not as good as I think I am.
Right.
I think Forte is going to win this race, and I think he's going to do it in such a manner that's going to make him a very strong favorite, even though there will be other really good colts in that race. Not a lot of them, but 3 or 4 at least that deserve backing. But Forte, to me, what he showed me in this race, I was more impressed with this race than any race he'd run last year, and I don't think he will do nothing but build on it in the Florida Derby.
One of the interesting things is he's such a good finisher. He's run 3 route races at a mile and a 16th. He's won all 3 from off the pace, and all 3 ended at the 16th pole finish line, the 2 at Keeneland and the 1 at Gulfstream. He finally gets that last 110 yards to run up the score a little bit with the way he finishes races. So I think he'll be very tough to beat, obviously. We'll handicap the race more in depth. And, of course, we'll have the full handicapping report for you on Friday when we have our First Call podcast and really get a chance to go in depth. And we'll look at some long shots. We'll look at the situation with the post position, the pace scenario, and all that kind of stuff later in the week. Also on Saturday, it's the $1.25 million Arkansas Derby from Oak Lawn, 7:50 Eastern, the post time there, where it's Red Route 1, the best of the locals. Reincarnate coming back from California. Had run at Oaklawn earlier in the year. Tim Yakteen sends him back. Rocket Can comes west from Gulfstream Park. And so we've got a good national cast here. We may not have any of the superstars, Jeff, but as far as regional matchups go, we've got a major stakes winner from California. We have a major stakes winner from Florida, and we have the best of the locals that are left. It's interesting. None of the horses who won the prep races at Oaklawn this spring, the Smarty Jones, the Southwest, or the Rebel, are in the Arkansas Derby. All 3 of those are not running in here, but we still get a pretty good intersectional cast. It'll be a cool race to see.
It will, and something might emerge. It's not the strongest, race we've seen down there. But Rocket Can, I actually thought he ran pretty good in the Fountain. I thought he was between horses. He battled back. He's not going to beat Forte. I get that, but I thought that was a good effort for him. And if he can build on that, then at this stage, what I'm looking at is trying to figure out who's coming out of the best races and who ran the best in those best races. And I thought Rocket Can ran well. The others, I got to see more from, quite frankly. Yeah. So at this stage, I'm tempted to go with him, Rocket Can, unless I find something down the road in the next couple of days that changes my mind. But I think I don't know if he's a great horse or anything like that, but he might be good enough just to win this one.
Arkansas ownership on Rocket Can. So this is a race that, they want to win. They probably are avoiding Forte to some degree, but if it were, say, Kentucky people and they were avoiding Forte in Florida and coming to Arkansas, you might say, it's not the most, strongest angle to take, that I'm just trying to find easier competition. But you got Arkansas ownership here. They want to win the Arkansas Derby, Fletcher family. So I think that's a good sign there. And if you're liking Rocket Can on Saturday, I'd say just keep on rolling with it and see if he can't take down another one. He's run really good so far in his 2 races this year, the Holy Bull and the Fountain of Youth. 5th and final topic this week. Each week we're trying to find the stars of tomorrow, horses out of the maiden or sometimes allowance ranks. Already have a couple starts under the belt. Who might be a star of the future from the past week? Horse named Anywho. from Antonito on Monday.
Takes the lead at the top of the stretch and is traveling strongly. Takes command and opens up to Coffee in Bed. Will try to chase her down. Liberal Lady is down at the rail. Coffee in Bed lengthening stride, coming after Anywho. Anywho a length and a half. Coffee in Bed chasing gamely. Anywho is a tough customer, however, and it's Anywho strong in victory. Scores by 2.
So she's unbeaten through 2 starts. Jeff, tell us about Anywho.
Oh, this good filly. Now, Anywho is a Boltoro filly. She won her debut with a 54 buyer number at Aqueduct last October. Subsequently went through the sale at Keeneland, brought 290, brought out here by Hronis Racing for John Sadler.
Right.
And I was talking to Juan Leyva before the race, actually the day before when she was schooling. I was in the paddock, and he said to me, I know that the form wasn't that good, but I get on her every morning. I breathed her. I really think this is a good filly. I says, how much worried should I be about that low number? I said, look, if you like her, that's good enough. But I'm telling you, the Coffee in Bed is a curling filly who won first time out. Richard Mandela was quoted as saying one of the best fillies he may have ever trained. You got Get the Money Honey, who won at Del Mar and won by 5, looked like terrific filly.
Right.
I said, this is an allowance race. It's the first level allowance race. It might as well be a grade 1. So if you win this race, you've got yourself a graded stakes filly. And Anywho won the race, beat Coffee in Bed, who ran her race, 122 flat for 7/8, which is a good time. Did it like a filly who will run on. And then talking with John Sadler after the race, I said, man, she's won a maiden, she's won a non-one as a 2. You got to go in stakes. What are you going to do now? Yeah. Not that I don't think that she shouldn't, but you got to find the right stakes, Yeah. He says, I don't know. He says, well, maybe a race like the 8 Bells at Churchill Downs might be the right one. And I'm saying, no. Money's Gold's running there. You want no part of her. Maybe down the road, but not now. Go somewhere else. And he said, you're right. I don't want no Money's Gold. So I don't know where this filly is going to show up. Anywho, but they're going to, I said, I don't know if Keeneland comes up too quick or not, but there are races that she is going to be very tough in, and I think she'll run long as well. So that is a very good filly. Coffee in Bed is a very good filly. She'll run long. Get the Money, who was third in the race, got left at the gate. She's a really good filly to be third. Yeah. Again, a very fast, highly rated live race, 3 future stakes horses for sure. And Anywho could be really, really good. And I'm curious to see what's next for her.
Yeah, maybe the Beaumont. That comes up like the 3rd week of the Keeneland meet, if memory serves me. That wouldn't be a bad spot, 7/8 of a mile there in graded stakes company. But we will see. The Stars of Tomorrow, Jeff, is something we started last June, and they've uncovered some really good ones. In fact, the aforementioned
Money's Gold,
Money's Gold was our very first Stars of Tomorrow last June when she won her debut at Monmouth Park, and you tabbed her right off the bat, and she's run through the screen since. And her race at Tampa, I know it was against just Florida breds on Florida Gold Cup Day, Florida Cup Day on Sunday. But she was awesome in that, and she's headed to something big. The 8 Bells, like you mentioned, Acorn, those kind of races would all just seem like that's the path we're going to see for Money's Golden Test at Saratoga. Maybe they want to go along with her at some point in time, but right now she looks absolutely fabulous going short. And in the long term, we'll see what they want to do with her. But Money's Gold, awesome performance last week. And Anywho gives us another good-looking 3-year-old filly to look forward to in a crop where we're trying to find them. I mean, we're off with Hoosier Philly and some of the upsets we saw at Fairgrounds over the weekend. Norm Cassie's filly ran really big in there. We'll be heading to the Kentucky Oaks. We'll get a look at Wet Paint this weekend in the Fantasy. She's going Saturday at Oaklawn Park. So we still have the big one at Keeneland still to come yet with the Ashland. So 3-year-old filly picture is changing right now. Yeah. And it's going to change quickly here over the next 10 to 14 days. So that's where we're at on the road to the Kentucky Oaks. But all eyes from here on are on the road to the Kentucky Derby. And it really, really gets serious over the next 2 weekends. 5 major preps. 2 this weekend, the Louisiana Derby and the Florida Derby. And then coming up in a week's time after that, we'll have the trio of the Bluegrass, the Wood, and of course the Santa Anita Derby. So it's all, we're going to know everything we want to know in the next 2 weeks, Jeff, about this crop. Then it'll be just a matter of trying to sort them out and watch them train. So exciting time of year. Our 5 topics on the big board this week are now all declared official because Jeff Siegel and I said so. So hats off to those in Dubai, to Todd Pletcher's new shooter who won the Louisiana Derby, Kings Barn, giving him a bagger perhaps to run in the Kentucky Derby. Two Phils made his way to Turfway successfully. Our Triple Crown tracker looked ahead to the weekend races this week in Florida and also in Arkansas. And then finally, our star of tomorrow this week, filly named Anywho for John Sadler. Jeff, final thoughts here as we get into what is Florida Derby week.
It is intense. As March Madness fades, we get into April and May Madness, and some great racing coming up on all fronts. Obviously, Gulfstream Park, and then Santa Anita the following week, and of course New York as well. And then Keeneland looks like it's set for an incredible run of stakes races. Yep. So it's going to be a lot of fun coming up in the next several weeks, and looking forward to the great sport of thoroughbred racing.
Yeah, among the nominees at Keeneland in the Lafayette, I saw was Cave Rock. Maybe we'll see his 3-year-old debut coming up shortly at Keeneland.
Yep.
On behalf of everybody with First and my partner Jeff Siegel, good luck to our friends in Florida putting on the Florida Derby this weekend. I'm Jeremy Plonk. Have a great week. We'll talk to you on Friday when we handicap all the weekend stakes races on the First Call podcast.